I'm glad and I'm really excited to introduce you guys to my foodie bestie. We've been foodie besties for a few years now. And she's a great person. She's a wonderful chef. She's taught me a lot. So I'm just going to read her bio, and then I'll tell you a little bit about how we came to know each other, and we'll get started with the class. So her name is Elena Tedeschi. Before graduating from the Natural Gourmet Institute for Health and Culinary Arts, Elena was a behavior therapist and a therapeutic mentor for children and adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. She left the more traditional therapy world to pursue her culinary passions, and now has come back full circle as a large part of her work, which blends mental health with physical health via cooking and nutrition. Elena currently offers wellness and culinary coaching and private cooking classes, and she's the owner and founder of Well-Rooted Kitchen. In all that she does, Elena really does strive to show the world that cooking should be adventurous, yet approachable, exciting, and most of all, delicious. So I would love to introduce you guys to Elena, who is in one of those little boxes. She's going to make the dish that I originally intended to make, which is sweet potato casserole. I figured as one of the sides for the holidays, you might be just interested in making it. It's fun to sometimes just watch if you're just watching. I would love to see more of you if you would be willing to show your video so I could get to know people and match the names with the faces. I like to get to know the residents. Elena and I have been going back and forth because it's unusual that I'm giving the chef a recipe to make and giving her instructions. I felt pretty good about myself. And then we had a few glitches along the way, and this dish is very forgiving and improvisable. If improvisable is a word, because you can do a lot of different things. If you have allergies, you can switch it up, and it's still delicious, and it's a great side dish, and you can even have it as a dessert if you want it. So, Elena, you want to get started?
Hello. Yes. The one thing I do know about technology is if you need to pin me, you can pin my video so that it stays on me. And thank you for the introduction, Omayra. Yeah, we've known each other how many years now? 5, 6 years? I don't know.
6 or 7. About 6 or 7.
Even 7. Okay. See, time flies when you're having fun. Oh yeah, because before my son was born. So, but a lot of what bonded us was our love of food. So,
yep.
I'm glad that I could fill in for her. I wish I was in Puerto Rico though. Next time, you'll have to take me. All right, so it's a pretty easy recipe. And did you all roast up your sweet potatoes beforehand?
For those who are making them, at least.
If you guys are cooking along. Sorry, I'm trying to get both the view of what I'm cooking and my face, but it's not happening. Okay, I'm gonna grab my sweet potatoes. We also just
by the way, Elena is an amazing chef. And she's done a lot of work with the group homes where I work. So we're really fortunate to have her. And there's my nosy brother.
Thank you. Unfortunately, like I said, the technology, and we just moved recently, so I had to go dig out some cooking supplies just for this class, but it helped me get, my kitchen more set up. So, okay, so we have our sweet potatoes. And one of the things that I learned from Omayra when we were going through the recipe, and I was asking her, well, it says an egg, but then there is no egg. So do I put an egg in there or not? And so I realized that she said when you roast your sweet potatoes, she found in playing around with the recipe that she doesn't really need the egg. So we're going to trust her on that.
Yeah, so I've made this a lot of times. So when I've made the recipe, I've boiled the potatoes, the sweet potatoes, and I've also roasted the sweet potatoes. But one of the things that I've loved to do now is I roast most of my root vegetables. So if I'm making a soup, sweet potato or butternut squash soup, I'll roast the potatoes or the squash instead, because it just really gives it a richer flavor, more depth to it, and it eliminates the amount of water. So when I boiled it, I used an egg to bind it. When I roasted it, I realized I didn't need it. So if you have an egg allergy, which Elena brought up earlier, that's a good point. You don't need to use the egg if you roast it. So that's just a little tip.
Yeah. So sorry that you're staring at like half of my body. I'm gonna see if I can lower myself. Here we go.
Well, I think the food is more important, so it's okay. I've done it, and I just had the same problem.
So I'm just peeling my potatoes, which are still piping hot, but that's fine.
Is there anybody making this in real time with us? Anybody?
I don't want to see
I don't
another
think
potato for a while.
Oh, after Thanksgiving?
Right, I made tons of roasted root vegetables.
Oh, I love that.
The last ones last night.
Ah,
Yeah.
that's good.
Well,
Next time you do that, Charlotte, please call me. I'd love some leftovers.
Oh, okay.
Well, and the great thing is if you did have some leftover, like let's say you roasted up some sweet potatoes for Thanksgiving and you wanted to do something different with them, you could kind of put together this recipe. Like if you just bake them up or something and you had them, you could do this. You could also, I think, cheat and do like pumpkin, or even, well, when I say cheat, if you really wanted to, you could do like canned pumpkin. It's not going to have the same like depth of flavor as roasting would, because the roasting brings out those natural sugars and caramelizes them, so you get like a nice sweetness. But in a pinch, you could do that, or you could roast up a pumpkin. You could totally do this with butternut squash would also really work well, or an acorn squash. So this recipe, I think, we really.
I have made it with butternut squash.
Oh,
as well.
I could see that. And I also feel like you could make this. It would be interesting to make it even savory. I'm more of a fan of savory than sweet. So switch out some of your fillings and do a little herb, which would still work. You can do like a sweet and savory. But anyway, so here I am with my sweet potatoes. And I made some extras just in case. But I think, again, like Omayra said, I feel like this recipe is pretty forgiving and you don't have to really go by exact quantities. I'm a big believer you should trust your gut when you make recipes and taste along the way. And you can always make a recipe your own. So you don't always have to trust recipes. In fact, insider secret, oftentimes cookbooks and even recipes are online are not the best. Now you can kind of get away with finding a good one because you'll see reviews. And so usually, if it's 5 stars and at least 100 people or so have reviewed a recipe, then it's a pretty good bet that your recipe is going to work out. But I'm always a little iffy if I see a recipe online and it has no reviews or low reviews. Often the comments will give you the better recipe. So just because it's like a fancy name or someone, don't always feel like you have to follow a recipe to the T, because they're not always recipe tested. And everybody's flavor profiles are different. So, you might love 4 cloves of garlic and the recipe calls for 1, or the vice versa. So don't be afraid to make recipes your own. Okay. So I've got my sweet potatoes and they're nice and soft. I'm just going to give them a little mash here with my fork, or a potato masher could work. And to these, we are going to add, I have my assistant off camera, aka my husband. So, all right. So what I like to do before I go start a recipe is do a mise en place. And it's just French for put in place. So in my mise en place, I have the Uh-oh.
Looks like a Julia Childs tape.
There you go. That's for a comedic effect. There we go. So in my mise en place, as I was trying to say, I have all my things measured out. Mise en place just means put in place. And we have those eggs that we talked about, which we actually don't need. So I'm going to take those off because we roasted our stuff instead. Get it back to this. So to my sweet potatoes, and Omayra, correct me if I'm wrong, following along here, I'm going to add a cup of regular sugar. Mine just look, I don't know if you can tell. Okay, so this is just a half a cup of.
And sometimes, just so you know, I have used all brown sugar. If I didn't have white, I've used all white. I've used maple syrup. I've used pretty much whatever I had to sweeten it.
Yeah, you can do that. You can do honey. You could do, I wouldn't necessarily use a lot of honey. Honey's better not cooked, but.
Yeah, I was going to say not honey, really.
Yeah, honey would definitely change up the flavor a little bit. But your maple syrup, with maple syrup though, make sure you account for the added moisture because it's a lot more liquidy. But so I have my half a cup of white sugar, half a cup of brown sugar. You'll see recipes say light brown or dark brown sugar. That is a change in how much molasses is left. So molasses is a byproduct of making sugar. So when you boil down the sugar cane, it'll turn into some molasses, or you'll get some molasses there. So the brown sugar just means that it has more of that.
Yeah.
Molasses.
Now, for those of you,
go ahead.
For those of you who have diabetes or just really are trying to eliminate sugar, I have used coconut sugar. I don't know if anyone's ever tried that, and it has a low, what is it, Elena? Low glycemic?
Low glycemic, yeah. So it will spike your blood sugar a little bit less.
And so that's, I don't prefer it because I just don't like the flavor of it that much, but I have friends who really love it, who are just trying to be more mindful of the sugar intake, and they have really said that they've liked it. So the other thing is, sometimes when you roast the sweet potatoes or the butternut squash, it is very sweet on its own, and you're adding cinnamon and other things that will make it taste sweet. So you may not even need the sugar. There will be sugar on top.
Exactly. And I think cinnamon brings out, like you were saying, brings out sugar. And also an interesting thing is when you look at things that naturally go well together from a flavor standpoint, like sugar and cinnamon, or like basil and eggplant, things like that. There's often a reason why they taste good together. And so cinnamon actually helps your body regulate sugar. So it's like interesting that your body decides, or that from a taste perspective, those things go really well together. Or with like the eggplant, it was actually more eggplant and cheese, or tomato and cheese, like a caprese salad, because tomatoes have nightshades, which can affect your calcium uptake. But if you eat it with cheese, you're kind of offsetting it. So it's kind of interesting to think about why foods go together.
Can I have a question?
Sure.
So what happens if you just use a half a cup of sugar?
That's fine too.
It's fine too.
You're totally fine, yeah.
I was a little bit distracted. Did you put cinnamon? I think I missed that.
I haven't put cinnamon yet. I put some butter, which I just chopped up a little bit.
How much?
It was a half a cup of butter.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, a half a stick of butter. And I just chopped it up a little bit because this is still warm, so it's melting it perfectly. If your potatoes were cold, then you might want to melt it, because you want that butter to distribute throughout.
So far, 3 things are in.
Yeah, so we've got our sweet potatoes. We have the 2 sugars, the brown sugar and the white sugar.
Butter. Thank you.
And the butter.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can totally, like Omayra was saying, you could skip the butter. I mean, you could skip the sugar. You could, in theory, skip the butter. You could make this vegan with like coconut oil. It'll have a coconut flavor, and you could sub out this with any kind of, dairy-free milk or coconut milk. But this
Right.
is
What she's putting in now is half and half.
exactly. This
So
is
I've usually, I've used half and half. I've used almond milk. If I didn't have half and half, I've used heavy whipping cream with a little milk if I didn't have half and half. So again, it's very forgiving and improvisable.
How
And
much?
you use non-fat, half and half?
this was a half a cup.
Yeah, you can use non-fat as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And when you're pouring stuff in, which I didn't do, but I'll tell you guys to do, even though, again, back to the recipes, it says half a cup, but check, because it also just said 4 to 6 sweet potatoes. So that's, you could have 4 to 6 big ones, small one. So your quantity of potatoes is going to be a little bit different. So therefore, you also want to be careful with your liquids because you might not need as much liquid if you don't have as much sweet potato. So you could also pour in a little bit at a time. These kind of recipes, like Omayra said, are forgiving. If you are baking like a cookie or a cake, then your ratios are really important because it's a chemical reaction that you need it to either, be a pancake or a cake or a cookie. And it's the same ingredients pretty much, but different quantities. But in this one, we're just going for flavor pretty much and some texture. We're not really looking for, it to turn into a cake. So we're good on that. And you could blend this. You could do like a hand blender. I have a stick mix here because I wasn't sure how soft my sweet potatoes were going to be, but they're really nice and soft. So, and I kind of like that texture that they're a little bit there's still some pieces, but that's where, again, personal preference could come in. If you wanted it to be really smooth, you could use, again, a hand mixer or a stick blender. The next thing I'm adding in is salt. It said a tablespoon of salt. I'm going to start a little bit less and test it out. This is also flaky kosher salt. So I don't know if you can see my flakes. It has a little bit more air around it than a regular table salt. So you can kind of use a little bit more with kosher salt. Chefs typically really like kosher salt because it's flakier and it also dissolves better. It's great for sprinkling on a steak or when you're brining something. Kosher, that flaky kosher salt, not the coarse one, but the flaky one. So I'm gonna stir it and then I'm gonna taste it and see what I think. I mean, potatoes can usually take a decent amount of salt. In fact, if you were making a soup, like a regular, any kind of soup, and you messed up and you dumped in too much salt, you could throw a potato in there without, not chopping it up, but just kind of peel it and put it in your soup, and the potato will absorb the salt, and that way your soup won't be as salty, and then you just take out the potato. So let's taste. When we were in culinary school, you always had to have a tasting spoon with you because you need to taste along the way.
Pardon me, can you tell me where we can purchase the kosher salt?
Just most grocery stores will have it. I'll show you.
They do have it. They do have it at our Stop and Shop.
About 3 grocery stores, supermarkets, they only carry the coarse.
Oh,
Have you gone? Okay, so the other thing you can do, which I have done, I have taken the coarse and put it in a high-speed blender, and I just blended it up.
Okay,
You can do that.
Purchase yours?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Could you tell me where you have purchased yours?
What makes it kosher?
Oh,
I just purchased this, so it's this one. It doesn't have to be this brand. There's a couple other ones. This is a pretty popular one.
It's not coarse, correct?
It's not coarse. No, it's already, fine like this.
fine.
Tell me where can it be purchased? Because I went to 3 or 4 supermarkets. Nobody had it.
You went to Stop and Shop?
I went to Stop and Shop. I went to ShopRite. I went to Acme. I went to
How about Trader Joe's? How about Trader
the
Joe's?
food store that's over in Eastchester. No, Trader Joe's does not have it.
What
They don't
makes
have it.
kosher? Does anybody know what makes it kosher?
That is a good question, and I don't know.
Does the rabbi say a prayer over it, make it kosher?
Can you tell me where you
I
purchased yours, please? Can you tell me where you purchased yours?
That, doesn't mean a
Well-
certain standard to be kosher.
I don't know. I mean, it doesn't have, obviously, I don't use it. I'm not Jewish, but I don't use it for the kosher part of it. It's just, I
All right,
think
so
it's
I'm
because
gonna-
the
I'm
way
gonna
that they
read.
do it. Oh, yeah. You
I
can find it.
Googled it.
I just wanted to
Googled
ask
it.
you, could I ask you, please, where did you purchase it?
Oh, me? I
Well,
just purchased, I don't even remember. I go to so many grocery stores, but I've always usually found it. I found it at Fairway. I found it, I now live in Jersey. So like the ShopRite has it.
No, I tried there. They did not have it.
Hmm.
They have
That's
course,
interesting.
but I don't want the course.
Okay, so who,
The Chicos might have it, the new Chicos.
Balducci's and Heathcote might have it.
What about, do you have any, I mean, because it is a Jewish product, do you have any Jewish stores around?
So try Balducci's in Scarsdale.
Okay. Thank you.
What is the difference between sea salt and kosher salt?
So sea salt, like the name kind of suggests, is made from there's a couple different ways that they get it, but primarily it's evaporated salt from the sea. So why sea salt is, I like sea salt a lot as well, because you get all the minerals from the sea. It is less processed than a kosher salt. So it depends on what I'm doing. If I've like seared off a steak and I just want to do like a finishing salt, I like the Maldon salt, which is a sea salt. There's like a pink Himalayan salt actually comes from a salt deposit in the mountains. But it was from an old sea or body water that was there. And the pink comes from the minerals that are in there. You can also see like the Celtic sea salt, which is almost a green beige color. And again, the coloring comes from the other minerals that are in your salt. So that's why you hear a lot about using sea salt maybe over other salts, is because in addition to just sodium, you're getting some trace minerals as well. And they have slight different flavors. There's a slight, if you really want to get technical, you can like do a salt taste test. But Omayra, you said you had something about kosher?
Yeah, well, so the kosher salt has little to do with it being blessed or anything. It's really the size of the salt that it's the larger salt is what I'm reading. I looked it up. I also love to use Himalayan salt. So Himalayan salt I use a lot, and it's similar to sea salt in that it has the minerals, that oftentimes as we get older, our body loses. So I don't see any reason not to use sea salt or Himalayan salt, in my opinion.
Yep.
All the time. That's what I use all the time.
You can totally switch it up completely, not a problem. Yeah, so I have a bunch of salts. I have a whole bunch of pink Himalayan salt, which is this is coarse, so you don't have to grind it up. Then I have this other Comalina salt, which comes from Mexico. It's like a white salt. So that's
a chef for you.
That's a chef. I have like a bunch. This one is more kind of crumbly. It's not quite coarse, not quite fine. I even have more salts, but I won't bore you with all my salts.
I like the Malden salt also because it looks like flakes. It's like like the potato flakes when you make the box potato mashed potatoes, which I ask you please not to make, but that's what it looks like. It's like the little flakes, and it's really good. It just like melts in your mouth. I like it.
Well, so speaking of melting, that was totally not planned, but I'm going to melt some butter for my topping. So in here, this is kind of like the base. Then this is where you can play around with it. If you want, you could add more cinnamon. You could add ginger would also go really well with this. If you have a pumpkin pie spice mix, you could throw that in there. And
nutmeg.
Again,
I love nutmeg.
Nutmeg. And so nutmeg, I like it whole, and a little goes a long way. Honestly, this jar of nutmeg would probably last me like a lifetime. Because it's again, it's very strong. And I use a microplaner, so it's going to keep its flavor, and you will have those things for forever. So I just
Elena, what about vanilla? We can add vanilla?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Where did I put my vanilla? Do you see
Vanilla extract or vanilla bean.
You could do vanilla beans, vanilla extract.
Yeah, now I use vanilla emulsion, which is more of it's more like, it's not a liquid, it's more like it looks like a gel, and it's very flavor. It gives a lot of good flavor if you don't have vanilla bean. Most people don't have vanilla bean hanging around in their house unless you're Elena.
Yeah, I sometimes do. I don't currently. I actually realized I couldn't even find my vanilla. Again, I'm sort of still unpacking in my house. But there's one, I forget the brand, but it's that. I think it's probably what you're talking about. It's like a little jar, and it's like a vanilla bean paste. So you still have the little seeds, in there, because that's the flavor. And does anybody know where, like, what the vanilla pod is and where it comes from?
Where does it come? I know where it comes from. Where does it come from?
Madagascar.
Okay, so location, but what part of what kind of plant? Does anybody know?
A pod.
The pod. It comes from an orchid. An orchid pod. So this is my vanilla. You can totally do, I'm just gonna do, I don't know, like a little capful, like a quarter teaspoon or so. By the way, for me, I didn't think it needed a full tablespoon of salt, but that's just me.
Yeah, I like the salty with the sweet, so it all depends on your palate. My palate is probably not as sophisticated as Elena's. So.
Well, it's funny because I usually like salty things.
Oh yeah.
But I just felt like it was salty enough for me. Okay, so that's my filling. Again, you could add cinnamon, you can add vanilla, cardamom is also a nice flavor for sweet. But especially with salt, you can always add salt, but you can't take it out. So start a little bit and work your way up. So in here, I'm just gonna melt a half a stick of butter.
So if you notice, we're using 1 stick of butter, half for the actual souffle part, and then half for the topping.
Okay. So I'm going to so this is what my mix looks like, my filling. And I'm going to put my filling in a container here. My little mise en place also helps for cleanup. And I like to line it with a little piece of parchment paper, so that way when it's done, I can just wrap up my parchment paper and throw it out. So I'm going to, I need a spatula.
Is anyone on this Zoom doing food scrapping in Tuckahoe? I really strongly encourage you.
But it was beginning to smell, but now the weather's colder, I can do it.
In January, we will likely be picking up the food scrapping instead of you having to drop off at the DPW. So I just found it to be so much fun. I'm really seeing how much actual real food I'm eating as opposed to processed food. And it helps me really keep track. So if you haven't done it yet, I encourage you. You can get it at the DPW, a kit. You can email me if you want me to drop one off for you. I would be happy to. And just kind of talk to you about a few tricks that I do. Whenever I cook, I have it right on my counter. So when I peel my sweet potatoes, it goes right in there. I just, I love to use it because if I crack eggs, everything just goes right in there, and I see how little processed food I eat now because I'm really keeping track. It's like I have this little contest with myself. want to see which garbage can I fill up, faster, the food scrapping one or the processed food one. So just want to encourage you to do that. Good for our environment too.
Yeah, and what I like to do with food scraps is, well, my dream now that I have a backyard is to compost myself and put it in my backyard. But I also have a little Ziploc freezer bag, and I always put like my carrot peels, onion peels, pieces of carrot or whatever. I have to turn off my butter. And in a freezer bag, chicken bones. If I cook up rotisserie chicken, or even if you buy rotisserie chicken from the store and you have the bones, throw it in your freezer bag and then dump it into a pot with water, and you have stock. If you want just vegetable stock, obviously don't put the chicken in there, but it's great. Like parsley stems. I would stay away from cilantro stems unless you want a really strong cilantro broth, which works great for, like, I don't know, Thai cooking. But parsley stems, like rosemary, thyme, if you buy herbs and they're kind of going bad, throw them in there. So okay, so here's our base, and now we have our topping, and it's going to take 2 seconds to make that. It's really quick, and then
this is the best part of it all. This is the best part.
Yeah. So we have about 3/4 cups of brown sugar again. Just break that up a little bit. If your brown sugar gets hard and you get those clumps in it, you can sprinkle it with some water and put it in the microwave for like a minute at a time, and put a wet paper towel over it, and it will rehydrate and break apart. So if you think, like, oh my gosh, I've like ruined my brown sugar because I didn't keep it airtight, all is not lost. You can bring it back to life. Or they have those brown sugar bears that you dip in water and then you throw them into your bag of brown sugar. And those are made to keep your brown sugar moist. Little tips. And it's, I think, a 1/2 cup of flour. So this is a 1/4 cup. So I'm going to do 2 of these. And when you're measuring dry ingredients, you want to use a dry measure, which are these kind of things, and you want to zero it out, like just flatten it to make sure it's accurate. Again, this recipe, not as big of a deal, but other recipes, you want that. And if you're doing liquids, that's when you want to use like the liquid pour, because you want to look at that level of liquid to make sure it's accurate. So dry ingredients, these kind of cups, wet ingredients in your in the bigger kind of glass or plastic that you can see the meniscus, that water line. All right, so blended that together. You could totally sub this with like gluten-free flour. I wonder, I feel like even like an oat flour would work.
Sorry.
So, okay, so I've got that.
Yeah.
I've got my pecans. I'm just gonna give them like a rough chop.
Mm-hmm.
When you hold your knife, you want to hold it here on the actual blade, not back here, but on the blade. You get a lot more control. And then your other hand on top, because you always want to have both hands occupied, not on the table, so that you don't accidentally cut yourself. So I'm just going to give this a rough chop. If you want it to be super fancy, you could actually probably keep them whole. And like, if you want it to be meticulous, you could like line them up whole on top. So again, this is really your choice of how you want it to look. I'm going to mix these in. You could, again, chop them up more or less. These guys
And just so you guys know, again, if you don't want to use regular flour, I have used almond flour, coconut flour. If you have people with gluten, gluten allergies.
Right, exactly. You don't have to do. And here's my butter going in.
Which should not be piping hot. That's the other thing.
Yeah, it's not hot. I cooked it and let it cool up a little bit. Because you don't want to clump. If it's piping hot, you'll clump your flour.
Mm-hmm.
And then to this too, you can add your cinnamon and your nutmeg to your topping as well. So we're making like a streusel topping here. So I'm gonna sprinkle in, I just go by eye. I don't know, a quarter teaspoon or so of cinnamon. I'm gonna get my little nutmeg guy back out. Throw a little nutmeg.
And so it should be crumbly. You know, there can be some thicker part, like some little ones that create like a little ball. That's okay. It doesn't have to be totally dissolved.
And you
As long as
can.
the important thing is that the butter absorb into the flour and that you don't see white clumps of flour. That's the important thing.
And I'm a big proponent of getting your hands in there. So hands were the tools that were made first. So don't be afraid to get your hands in there and just kind of clump it up. And so I think, yeah, you want it to kind of be this sort of like wet sand consistency. So I think this looks good. What do you think, Omayra?
Looks good. Looks good to me.
All right,
It's making me
so
hungry.
let me swap this out.
Now we are two.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're
Can you
just
drop
gonna,
some off? Can you drop some off to everyone's house when you're done?
totally, send me your address. I'll come bring you some.
Now, I would let you know, some people feel, they called me, you know, my family has called me and said, there seems to be too much. Is it too much? Do not think it's too much. It's not. When it cooks, it sort of like goes in a little bit. It's fine. So don't worry about it being too much.
Oh, you mean the top?
That looks, yeah, the topping. That looks
Looks good to
beautiful.
me. Ta-da! All right, so I'm gonna put this in. 350, right? Yeah.
Yep.
For how long?
As long as it takes. No. I don't know, for that size, probably. I mean, you're really, because there's no egg in it, you're not even worried about anything being raw. You're just looking for the top to kind of come together and be crumbly and caramelized. So I would say 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
I've usually done a half an hour.
Yeah.
I've usually done a half an hour, and then I'll check it at a half an hour because I want the topping I want the flour and the flour and the sugar and the pecans to sort of toast on top. So it should look somewhat brown on the top. So a half an hour, I would check it out a half an hour at 350.
So I made like a mini guy. As my like tester.
You have to send that email out right now because I wanted to go watch more.
Ginger, you talking to us? Ginger, Donald, you talking to us?
Oh, sorry. He's busy doing his stuff.
I was on the phone with Erin, sorry.
No problem. But yeah, so I made a little mini guy, which actually I think is kind of a cute idea because if you had a bunch of little ramekins, you could put this up here. And
you can also cut the recipe in half. And if you don't want to make, if it's just you at home and you want to make a small portion, then cut it, size it down.
Yeah, exactly. And, again, it really just goes by taste. But you do, I think, want that top to be crispy. So you kind of get that, I don't know if you can hear it, but you kind of get like a crispness to it.
Right. Yay, I'm so excited.
Da-na-na. I feel like I'm totally on one of those TV shows. I think it's really good.
How is it?
It's great. It's got like that salty and sweet and that cinnamoniness, say that 3 times fast. Which is very like a nice warming just spice. So in the winter, all those kind of like cinnamon and cardamom and ginger, not only do they taste good, but they actually like help your body kind of feel warm and cozy. So I think it's great. And I wish you guys could be in my house and smell it, because it's like you can smell the cinnamon and the toasty nuts and stuff throughout the house. So I'm surprised my 4-year-old, or he's now 5 actually, my 5-year-old hasn't come down and said, Mom, what are you cooking?
That's great to have a chef in the house. One of the things that I have really loved about my conversations with Elena is it's just, she's talked a lot so I work with people with developmental disabilities, for those of you who don't know. I am the CEO for the Institute of Applied Human Dynamics, and we provide housing and day programming for people with disabilities. And I met Elena at a previous organization I worked at, and we realized that our population seems to have a higher rate of diabetes and high blood pressure and high cholesterol, and it's very hard to get them to cooperate with, weight loss and better eating habits. As if it's easy for us, it's even harder for them. And so I wanted to try something that was not so traditional, a traditional nutritionist to come in and help us teach staff how to shop, how to read the labels, and the importance of, eating healthy. And one of the things that Elena taught me that I carry throughout my life, even with my family and with my friends, is, how when you're on a diet, it's like you're always depriving yourself of things. So she taught me, how to teach people how to add to your diet so that you can be healthier, as opposed to taking away from your diet, from your eating habits. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that, Elena.
Sure. Yeah. So, the first thing when people think about, I got to lose weight, is I got to take this out of my diet. I got to stop eating this. I got to stop eating that. And then then we all have that fear of missing out. And that's even myself. Like, I'm Italian, but I don't even really eat that many pizza or pasta. But if I'm like, okay, it's enough, I need to trim down. I'm not going to eat as many carbs. All of a sudden, that's all I want to eat is pizza and pasta, which is ridiculous, right? So instead of doing that, I don't think about the things that I'm going to take out, but let me add in. So, okay, let me add more vegetables to my dish. Let me add, let's go find a new interesting grain. Like, let's add in some, if you're like always using brown rice, or white rice, let me add in some brown rice to my rice until I get to 100% brown rice. Let me throw in some quinoa, or, so like, look at the new foods that you might discover. Especially, I think it's especially hard if you get diagnosed with a diet like celiacs or something, and you have to cut out, and you kind of medically have to cut out things. So instead of thinking of like, oh my gosh, I can no longer have this, it's, again, what is a new grain that I might eat? What's a new kind of pasta style that I might discover that's gluten-free? Or, if I'm going to replace dairy, there's so many cool like vegan cheeses out there. So I would look at it as like an adventure of the new foods you're going to discover and try out, versus focusing on all the things you can't now eat. So that's how I like to look at it. And also to not deprive yourself, if you're going to eat it, have your slice of cake, just enjoy it. And really give yourself permission to enjoy it and like savor it, and don't feel guilty, because that guilt, I think, is the number one worst ingredient in everything that we do. And so if you feel guilty while you're eating that cake, or, too many helpings of our pie here, then you're going to always want more. It's never going to satisfy that craving. But if you're like, I'm enjoying this, I'm going to savor it, I'm going to eat slowly and taste every bite, you'll find that you'll want less of it going forward, because you've like allowed yourself to really enjoy it, instead of like eating, thinking, I shouldn't be eating this, and now I have to go to the gym 10 more times. And then next day you're going to be like, that piece of cake just didn't satisfy me, I want more. So I encourage you all to eat more mindfully and appreciate the food as a way to also help you eat healthier. That's my soapbox.
Does anybody have questions for Elena?
Yes, Elena, if you bake the item in the ramekin, how long do you think it should bake in the oven?
This baked for about like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Oh.
5-6 minutes. No, actually 10. Sorry, but I also had my oven cranked up because I was still roasting some extra potatoes. So, but yeah, you really probably about 10 minutes. I would watch it because it's that sugar. The bottom doesn't really need to cook. And this is a teeny tiny ramekin. It's like,
Right.
this is tiny.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So who did?
By the way, Elena taught me to make pasta. That's one of the first things that she taught me to make. And that was delicious.
Everybody now. Yeah, handmade pasta too. I think once you make things from scratch, you also appreciate it so much more, and it tastes so much better. Did anybody make it along? I had just my screen view. I didn't actually see. Now I'm looking at the gallery view, but
doesn't look like it. I think everyone's just watched.
Is anybody going to make it? Did we inspire anybody to make it? Yeah.
Yes.
So
I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to try it. Yes.
Yes, I had stuff. I brought the stuff, but I didn't get a chance to do it. So I will do
And
it.
if anyone's going to make it, and I would love to make it with you, I would Zoom with you. Please let me know. I would love to do that.
My problem with this recipe is it seems like it should be super sweet. It has an awful lot of sugar in it. Plus
You can cut it out. Don't have to use all the sugar. The sugar is really just a flavor thing. It makes your teeth hurt.
So Charlotte, you can take the sugar out of the base, the souffle part, and then just reduce the amount of sugar for the topping.
It just seems like it just seems like an awful lot. I don't use that much sugar in 3 weeks unless I'm baking.
Right.
Anything more than a tablespoon to me is a lot of sugar.
Totally.
It is. It's a holiday kind of decadent dish, so it really is that.
But I will say, in my little mini one, I just did, in my potatoes, I did just a sprinkle of cinnamon, a little dash of vanilla, and I didn't put any sugar in this guy. And I think in the top was plenty. So you can totally skip it out. Another thing that you could do with the cinnamon to add a nice flavor, but without the sugar, is orange zest. You could zest an orange into it, and that'll brighten it up, and you don't need the sugar. You really don't. The only reason there's sugar on the top is to kind of give you that crispy kind of topping.
Yeah, and what is a complimentary entree with that? Poultry? What?
Poultry.
Supplement that.
Poultry is good. I've actually, I had this for the first time in my life. I had this at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. That's when I first tried this about 10 years ago. And I had it actually with the steak. I had it with steak and the spinach, creamed spinach. And that was a delicious combination. So you can have it with poultry. You can have it with steak. I think those two are probably the best things to have it with. I had it for Thanksgiving with turkey. So it's pretty versatile.
Mm-hmm. I think, with any kind of meat, or even some nice roasted greens, or broccolinis or something, because you do want that, definitely something more savory to offset this dish. And you can make, like I said, little ones, and it'll freeze. It should freeze really well. So you can make this ahead and then, cook it. You can make the tiny portion. So if you just wanted a little bit of, a little dose of something sweet, you can have some tiny ones. And I think this could also, if you make it less sweet, it'll go really well with the main meal. You could also treat this as a dessert. And I feel like this would go really well with some whipped cream and some ice cream. I think it would also go well.
Now you're cooking in my kitchen.
Julie, did you have a question? Julie Larkin?
She answered my question about the ramekins, how long I should bake it.
Okay.
And you can also sub out the nuts too. If you don't like pecans, you can do walnuts, pistachio.
Walnuts, yeah. I've run out of walnuts, and I've done walnuts instead of the pecans, but I love pecans, so.
Those are the best when they're fresh.
Yes.
Also,
Yeah.
I was just thinking, instead of like sugar, a lot of people, they don't want to eat. Like if you said don't put anything in the sweet potato, but on the topping, you can also, can we use like dates, chop the dates, buy dates and then include it?
Absolutely.
So then you're
Absolutely.
not using like a sugar, but you are using sweetness in another form, which has a fiber and also it's a natural sugar.
Absolutely. What I would do though, I wouldn't chop the dates. I would actually put the dates in a food processor so that it would be a little more crumbly.
Crumble. Okay.
Yeah. You could kind of make like a date syrup.
Like a date paste. Yeah.
Like a paste, yeah.
That's a good idea,
When you make
because I use dates a lot.
Huh?
I said that's a good idea. I use dates a lot to sweeten. When I make like vegan cheesecakes, I use dates.
Okay.
For the crumb.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Anna, did you have a question?
Anna?
Yes, I made it for Thanksgiving, and I suffer from the lactose intolerance, so I didn't put milk, but I used Greek yogurt, and it was tasting really good, and I think it's healthy because the yogurt is
very
not
healthy
bad for me. So
yeah, and you could, if you needed to completely use no dairy at all, you can totally, I think, sub out, either a coconut cream or a non-dairy milk.
Almond milk or cashew milk.
Almond milk, cashew milk.
Rice
I
milk.
would definitely look for one that's unsweetened, so you're not adding in the sugar, like an unsweetened, any of those. Totally.
I would use unsweetened vanilla almond milk. That's the one that I've used. The other thing that I have done, because I like to improvise, and I bake a lot with the Greek yogurt, plain Greek yogurt, but I've actually made that dish also with sour cream, and it was perfectly fine too. That was delicious.
Wow.
yes, that's what I did. I combined a little bit. I put a little bit of milk, but a lot of the yogurt, and it was really good.
Very nice.
The taste was very creamy and tasty.
And on the top too, you can use, there's a lot of now non-dairy butters, like Earth Balance, or again, like a coconut oil works kind of in the place of, it's going to have a coconutty flavor. So it's going to change the flavor for sure. So if you don't like coconut, then that's not a good idea. But you can sub out the dairy on the top as well, if you don't want to use butter. You could go super and not even put sugar or anything and just like put just some toasty nuts. You're not going to have that like, decadentness of the brown sugar, but you could just do more like nuts and oatmeal or something with a little bit of butter, just to bring it together, or a little bit of any kind of liquid to bring it together, and then not so much the sugar, and you'll get like a toasty top. But definitely play around with the amounts of sugar. There's no right or wrong, I don't think, for this one.
So you were saying we can use, instead of flour, we can use the oat nuts, like just roast
flour.
Yeah, you can use oat flour.
Oh.
Or you can even use oatmeal.
Yes, I was thinking that.
Right.
You can use oatmeal. Like when I make a crumble, like a crumble on top of
apple pie,
a cake or something, apple pie or something. You can use oatmeal. It's so forgiving. You can just substitute so many things with this, and take out what you don't want, add what you do want. It's a very forgiving dish. So I hope you guys try it. I appreciate you coming on and always, supporting the library and the programs, and just hanging out with us. So I appreciate it. And I want to thank Elena for coming on and pinch hitting for me. It's like I get like an actual chef pinch hitting for me, and look at me. I've arrived.
I know. And I just want to say thank you very much, Omayra and Elena. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I
Thank you
enjoyed
very much. It was fun.
And thank you for all the tips you gave us too. So
Yes.
Yeah, some good tips.
You're welcome. Anytime.
We're gonna have to come back on to show us how to make the pasta that she taught.
Oh yeah, that's fun.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes.
Bye, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Bye-bye.
If we don't see you.
Remember, only breathe out.
Happy holidays.
Yeah.
Happy holidays to you too.
Holidays. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Elena and Omayra. Thank you, Kaiti.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Charlotte,
Pleasure.
Julie, Eva, Rachel.
Yeah, we lost a few people.
See you.
Yes, I missed it. Yeah.
Nice to see you, Swadish, Heidi,
Yes, good
everyone.
to see you.
Yes, Charlotte. All right, bye, everyone. Good night.
Okay, Elena, we'll talk. I have to jump on another Zoom. Bye, everybody.
Okay.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you to the library to do this for us.
Oh,
No
you're
problem.
welcome.